Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Expanders Club podcast. I am your host, Brooke Harris, your host, your spiritual bestie, your spiritual advisor, hopefully all the things or any of the things, whatever you'd like me to be. I am here and at the very least, hopefully supporting your own journey of wellness, expansion, whatever you're feeling called to right now. I am excited to be here chatting with you guys. We just had the eclipse a few days ago. I don't know if you felt the energy. I certainly did. And for me, eclipses are about transformation and change. And this one really felt like stepping through a new door, stepping through a portal into like letting go of past stories, old BS, like things that just are no longer serving, and truly stepping into clarity and higher expression. And for me, I feel really embodied, feel really in my body, feel very clear, feel very aligned, feel lighter and more joyful than ever. So I'm excited to see where that goes. And I'm excited to hear about it for each of you. And hopefully you're having a similar experience. And if you're not, don't worry, yours is coming. We're all on our own timeline. Cool. I have spent 2 hours in the Akashic Records today, and so I am like high on consciousness. I don't know. I'm feeling really good. I have a little bit of that afterglow from the records. I had 2 oracle sessions with 2 different people today, and it was just so fun is a word. I mean, it's interesting because we are talking through some heavy stuff, but like it always goes to a really beautiful, empowering, transformative place. And it is just really beautiful to have the opportunity to witness people in that way, witness people from that consciousness, from that perspective, and just see their true fullest potential and their fullest light. So today's experiences were really beautiful. I think we need to do a whole little short episode on the Akashic Records and what they are. So stay tuned for that. But all that to say, I'm loving it. It feels so aligned. And I really, really love helping people in this way. If you're curious about what those are, the episode prior to this goes in depth a little bit more. You can also follow me on Instagram, _Brooke_Harris. And I'm sharing all kinds of fun stuff there. You can book in a session. This month I am doing a discount because of the eclipse and just feeling called to really help people through the cosmic energy that's happening right now. So you can book in a session through a link in my Instagram. I'll also link it in the show notes, and you can use the code FREEDOM for 30% off. So it makes it very reasonable, especially considering, we're floating off into higher levels of consciousness and you're receiving a ton of information and guidance from your guides, angels, loved ones, all the cosmic beings. If you feel called, I would love to do a reading for you, and you can book through that link. And again, use code FREEDOM for 30% off. And at the very least, my friends, you should follow my Substack. I'm having some fun there. I've had a couple issues come out now, and shared some stuff that was very personal. And this past week, I shared a channeled message from the guides, from the universe, from higher consciousness for all of you. And I think it is pretty profound and should help bring some clarity and bring some support to your life. So check that out. You can also find that link in my bio. Today's episode was really fun. We talk with Katie Bonarrigo. My goodness. I very much have messed up her name. It doesn't matter. Katie, you can find her at Shift with Katie on Instagram, and you can see her last name for yourself there, or her website, shiftwellnesscollective.com. She is a certified burnout coach and habit expert. So we get into, all things stress, the nervous system, stress cycles, how to complete a stress cycle, how to take yourself out of fight or flight, a bunch of really cool tips and tricks, how to form habits, what habits are important, how to stick to habits, a lot of very practical and necessary stuff for those of us who have maybe been in this stressful place, are feeling like stress is no longer serving us, are feeling burnt out, are feeling like it's too much, feeling low energy, seeing stress start to impact our health and our bodies and our mind. Like, one, it's time to be done with that. That's not going to serve us moving into the future. And also, some of the resolutions are really simple, or at least things that you can start working into your day to day to help get your body to a more peaceful place, your body and mind. And Katie shares a ton of those tips. So excited for you guys to listen and get them all from her. One thing that is really interesting that we talked about is reframing, fear or discomfort. And instead of using those words of like, I'm afraid, this feels uncomfortable, fear is what's stopping me, shifting into bravery and using the language around bravery. Am I feeling brave enough to do this? Can I be brave enough to do this? Can I be brave enough to take the next step? What level of bravery am I feeling now? I think it's like a really simple reframe. It's something I've seen, and I share about it a bit in the episode. We have used that language with our 3-year-old Bowie, and being brave is much more empowering than the story and the language around being fearful and something that you're afraid of. And so I think a lot of times with things like this, it's just that tiny shift, that tiny perspective shift, the tiny use of language and being really thoughtful around your language. I'm not afraid. I'm actually brave. Fear's not stopping me, because I know all I have to do is be brave for a short amount of time to get through this, and there's good on the other side. So I encourage you to think about that in your life when you're feeling fear, when fear comes up for you. Instead of sitting in the fear and being like, I feel fear, I feel uncomfortable. It's more about, how brave am I willing to be right now? What do I need to do to feel brave enough to do this? And I think that is far more empowering and far more likely to get you where you want to go than kind of dwelling on the fear and the why you're afraid of it. So be brave, my friends. You've got this. I believe in you. And look, there's no reason not to be brave in this lifetime. We are the creators of our own life. We are the fulfillers of our own destiny, and it takes bravery to get there, but it's so worth it. All right, my friends, I am so incredibly grateful for you. I hope you're enjoying kind of the new direction of things. I certainly am. We have a lot of really fun episodes coming up that dive a little bit more into spirituality. Excited to share those with you and kind of keep this balance between spirituality and very practical things to, apply to our very human lives, bodies, brains. All right. I hope you enjoy this episode, and we'll see you on the other side. All right, Katie, so happy to have you. Welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
Thank you. I'm so grateful to be here.
Yes, and I am thrilled about today's topic and topics. I think there's a lot of area we're going to cover from a very personal place. You are a burnout coach and habit expert, correct? Okay. Well, I want to dig into exactly what all that means and how you got here, but I mean, if there's anyone listening who can't resonate with stress, burnout, wanting better habits, you kind of it's kind of a really beautiful niche that you've hit on. For better or worse, we are living in a time where we are all stressed. We are all burnt out. We all want and need help with our habits. So like excited for our conversation. How does one, and I know we're going to talk about the stress cycle, we're going to talk about different like habits and some work around those and burnout, but like how does one become a certified burnout coach and habit expert?
So really just through my own experience with burnout, it was like a few years ago, I was working in healthcare and this was pre-pandemic, so I really didn't have a word for it at the time. It wasn't until after the fact when I was able to zoom out and be like, oh, I was definitely burnt out.
The pandemic brought us many things, including burnout.
Yes,
For better
exactly.
or worse, right?
Yes, exactly. So I was actually, my like stress was manifesting as like chronic pain and muscle tension. And I was actually like scheduled to undergo surgery on both of my hips because of the pain that I was experiencing.
What?
Because I do have like a labral tear in both of my hips. So, like, technically speaking, surgery could be justified.
Okay.
But prior to that procedure being scheduled, I was introduced to like a corrective exercise specialist who had like this whole toolkit of like holistic modalities. So we started focusing on like diaphragmatic breathing. It was the first time I had ever heard that term. More corrective exercise, more low impact, as opposed to me just like trying to do hit and strength all day, every day, because I thought that's what I needed to do to
Yeah.
stay healthy. And she was just like, I think, yes, you have these labral tears, but I think like the majority of your day-to-day symptoms are from the fact that your stress is just trapped in your body. And I was like, oh my God. So then we started working together, and through that, I was able to like completely almost eliminate. I would say like now it's like I'm 32. I do have like occasional aches and pains on a day-to-day basis. It's not that shocking. But so much like to much less of an extent than it was previously. And so then after that, during COVID, I was like, maybe I should get a certification to try to help people figure out how to manage their stress essentially. And so I went to the School of Integrated Nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
I got my health coaching certification. I got my personal training certification. So I would have that like physical
Yeah.
anatomy, kinesiology component. And then it was like after working with people who generally were seeking me out for weight loss for a lot of it, because
Mm.
again, I still hadn't yet put it together that I wanted to work with people that were burnt out. I was like, this isn't as fulfilling. Like, there's so much nutritional information out there. Like, it wasn't, like I said, it just wasn't fulfilling. And I was like, you know what?
Yep.
I really want to pivot and work with women who are like stretched incredibly thin at their breaking point and help them start to approach life almost in like a more liberated way. So they're making decisions that are going to make them happy as opposed
Yep.
to like everybody else around them.
Mm.
And so that's where I'm at now. I'm working with women one on one, managing stress, doing a lot of nervous system regulation, doing a lot of mindset stuff too, because I think we're all so hard on ourselves and so much harder than we need to be. Like society's already putting pressure on us constantly, that when we combine that with the expectations that we have for ourselves, it causes a lot of like disappointment and impacts a lot of those more like emotional, mental components of burnout. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
I love that. Such a beautiful journey. And they always, for women at least, they always start with like solving our own problems, right?
Mhm.
For better or worse, yeah, we, we would tend to get to a breaking point ourselves. But that's one thing that I love about women or people that are called to heal themselves is like, as soon as they have the information, they're like, I need to share this. Like, and let's like visit the conversation for a minute about the harm of stress because I think there's been in a point in recent society where it was kind of like it just is what it is, like we're stressed if and it's almost like there was a chapter for me where as like it sounds so silly and I'm like embarrassed to admit it now, but it was like almost like a badge of honor, like if you're not stressed you are not important enough, you're not doing anything big in the world, like you just don't get it, you don't get like what life is all about. And like first of all, that's fucked because it's actually the opposite. Like if you're stressed and running around like crazy, you're probably missing everything that life is all about. But I think more than like and that's like my own spiritual journey that I actually had to go on to actually fully get rid of my stress. And like even as I'm saying that, I'm like, wait, is it fully gone? But get to a place that felt more balanced. But I think like people don't understand how actually detrimental it is. Like you were feeling physical symptoms from it, but what else? What else does stress do to us?
Yeah. So if you think about it in the sense of like when your body detects a threat, whether that's like being chased by a lion, never happens, or like someone cutting you off in traffic, your body's not necessarily like differentiating between the severity. It's like, this is a
Mm-hmm.
threat. I'm automatically going to go into fight or flight. So your cortisol levels are going to increase. And because you're in this fight or flight state, all of the secondary processes that aren't necessary for survival are being deprioritized. So, like your immune function, your
Mm.
digestion, your muscle and tissue repair, your, yeah, like your mood, like everything is basically just taking a back seat to your survival. And so, because of that, like when you do that over time, your body starts to become adapted to these like elevated levels of stress hormones and things. And as a result of that, like you're going to end up getting sick a lot more often. You're going to have
Mm-hmm.
physical or muscle pain. You're going to have probably digestive issues. A lot of times it manifests as skin issues depending on exactly what's going on in your gut. So it really just like impacts every aspect of your body. It's a systemic issue. It's not just like, oh, I'm stressed. It's like I'm stressed and also like now I can't go to the bathroom or I'm going to the bathroom too
Yeah.
much or like
Yeah.
things like that. So it's
Yeah.
really like it's very much a systemic thing that needs to be dealt with. And the earlier the better, so that you're not in a position where you find yourself in the hospital because your symptoms are so extreme or whatever the case may be.
I love that explanation. I don't know if I've ever heard it put exactly that way, that it like puts you in a state where your body deprioritizes the basic things,
Yeah.
which yeah, that makes sense. And like we've all heard, or at least like I've certainly heard and felt the saying, like stress, stress is the cause of inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of all disease. Like what are what are some things that you're seeing in your clients that like are waking them up to make them be at this place where they're like, okay, I've got to do something.
Couple of clients that are dealing with like swelling, like excess swelling or lymphedema in their lower legs, which is a unique one. I have a couple clients who are dealing with like eczema. I have
Mm,
a couple other clients that are just like almost every month they get like a somewhat severe cold. Those are like more of the physical symptoms, I would say. And then otherwise, it's like people that are just like absolutely drained, exhausted, no matter how
yes.
much sleep they
Yes.
get. Another common one more recently is like they're feeling really irritable and on edge. So they're like snapping at their partner or like making a huge deal out of something that's really not that serious. They're just kind of like running around on autopilot with that, like you said, like they're missing everything that life is about because they're just like so zoned in on like being productive and having some sort of like output. And it's like, you can only do that for so long and your
Mm-hmm.
body will force you to
Oh
stop at
yeah.
some point if you don't intervene throughout. But I would say like those are the big ones. I think just too, like never feeling like you're enough, like you're trying to do
Mm,
everything
mm,
and be everything to everyone all at once, and then you're still like, but I'm not doing enough. Like there are other people that are out there doing more than me. And it's like anytime I hear someone say like it's not enough, I'm like, that's a cue. Like, okay, there's something else. There's some
yeah.
underlying thing going on here that like chances are you're doing way more than enough. It's just that society is what's telling you that you're not. And so then that is like, even just having those thoughts is going to trigger like a little bit of a cortisol increase because your body's interpreting that as a threat. And so it's like all of these negative thoughts also really manifest in our bodies physically a lot of the time too.
Oh, yes. It's wild. So back, and some of our listeners will remember back in February, at the end of February, I went to the heart doctor. I had already been a couple times and I went to get a bunch of things examined because for a year, or really longer than a year, my HRV was like in the teens. I would wake up with feeling heart tight chest, palpitations in the middle of the day. I would have like out of nowhere. I could be sitting at my computer doing nothing and like I would have heart palpitations. I would be jumpy at everything. Like one time specifically, I remember like I was pumping gas and like the gas had tank had like a TV on it. So like an ad played and I literally jumped out of my shoes to the point my reaction was like as if someone had come up behind me with like a knife to my throat because the noise of the ad scared me so much. And that was like, that's just an example, like a very silly example. That was one of the moments where I was like, shit, I really have to do something. But that happened a lot in those ways. And like you said, just on edge. And I kept seeking, like, I knew, I knew a lot of it was stress, but I was like, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing breath work. I'm like trying to do all this transformational work to change. And my heart is just not catching up. So like, maybe there's something wrong with it. And like, did all of the things, the EKG, the scanning, all of the tests that they had. And like, guess what? Totally normal heart. Like,
Yeah.
except for that, it was being impacted by, I love someone explained to me once, and it was on this podcast. We did an episode with an HRV specialist, and he was saying like your heart, the way your heart is basically the way it's reacting is what it's perceiving around you. It's like your heart is perceiving how safe you are. And I was like, oh, yeah, that makes sense for what I'm going through. And like, thank God, so much better now. It's a work in progress and probably will be for a while. But like having these realizations through this process for me, and especially being a new parent, realizing how much stress impacts everything that we do and our ability to show up for the people that we love, that was like a big thing of like, whoa, this is not worth it. None of this is worth it. None of these things are so important that they put me in bed on a weekend day and I can't spend time with my daughter, or make me too tired to show up for her and throw her in front of an iPad at the end of the day, or. So that was the big awakening for me. Where do you start with the clients that come to you?
It's nervous system regulation. And I feel like this is a good segue into like the stress cycle, because for my clients, like each of their programs are a little bit different depending on like what symptoms they're struggling with the most. But as a foundational piece, like regulating your nervous system is so, so, so important. And I think like a lot of people are like, oh, that just means like being chill all the time. Like it's not, it's really not. It's recognizing like when you're dysregulated, what are the physiological signs, and what actions are contributing to dysregulation. And so one thing that I like to tell people is, like we said, stress should occur in a cycle. There should be like a clear beginning, middle, and end. And oftentimes what happens is we get stuck in that middle stage of fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
Because for most of us, we're focusing on eliminating or dealing with stressors, like those external traffic, getting yelled at, conflicts with your partner, whatever the case may be. We're not letting the stress physiologically move through the whole cycle in our body. And so another insane statistic that I was reading during my research is like there's 9 times more information going from your body to your brain than your brain to your body. So like a lot of us, if we're in a stressful situation, it's pretty amazing. And so it's like when you get cut off in traffic, if you just try to talk yourself down, you're not really speaking to your body in a language that it understands. You have to do quite literally anything that gets you breathing deeply enough to stimulate your vagus nerve and activate your parasympathetic nervous system. That's how you get through the full stress cycle, so that then you can return to baseline, as opposed to, again, getting stuck in that middle stage where you're elevated and your stress hormones are firing, your sympathetic nervous system's out of whack, and things like that.
Okay, wait a minute. So can you give us example? Is that literally just taking like the deepest breath and like biggest exhale that you can?
Yes, I would say like 3 to 5 really deep breaths, longer
Okay.
exhale than inhale is like my number one go-to, because it's so accessible. You can do it in public. You can do it while you're talking to someone. Half the time, they're probably not going to notice. So that's super useful, like when you're at work, if you're having a challenging situation or conversation, whatever the case may be. Some of my other favorite tools are like jumping up and down and shaking it out. You look like a crazy person, but even if you just like bounce up and down on your heels, do that for like a minute. That's going to get your heart rate up. It's going to get your body breathing deeply. And then once you finish that, you will have completed the stress cycle. Progressive muscle relaxation is another really good one, especially like at night before you go to bed, just like tensing all of your muscles as hard as you can for 10 seconds and then releasing them, or doing like one muscle group at a time if you have a little bit more time. Cold exposure is another really good one. So like you could go all the way and do an ice plunge, or you could like stick your face in a bowl of ice, or even just holding an ice cube for a minute. I have a client who's been doing that this week and is loving it, because it sounds silly and you don't know until you try it. But like if you try to hold an ice cube and move it around in your hand for a second, like you're going to start breathing deeply because it's uncomfortable.
Yes.
Trying to think of my other ones.
It's interesting that you bring up the ice bath because we have one at our house and I use it often. But when I was in this, at the final stage of like, okay, it's not a medical thing with my heart. I need to really figure this out. I decided to give the ice bath a break because I was like, I don't know if I'm already stuck in this state. Like, is this putting me like even more in the state? Like I wasn't sure, and I just felt like it wasn't perfect for my heart. So I would love some advice on that if you have any to offer, because I love the plunge and I love what it does for me overall, but I'm like, is it right for my system right now? I don't know how to figure that out on my own.
Yeah, I think you do make a good point. I think it really kind of depends where you fall on the spectrum. Like if you're at peak burnout, which it sounds like you were, and I'm sorry you had that horrible experience. It's like it
Thank
was
you.
good in the sense that it was a wake-up call, but not so
Totally.
much that you had to go through all of
Yes.
that. But I think like yes, if you're at like full peak, I don't think you necessarily have to like write cold exposure off as a tool entirely, but I think you want to do more of like the sometimes I like to break up the tools in terms of like the more energetic forms of like stress relief versus the more restorative forms of stress relief. So
Yeah.
for you, I
Yeah.
might lean towards like breathing or progressive muscle relaxation or even like just doing legs up the wall, things like that.
Okay.
So they're like
Right.
lower intensity but still effective.
Yeah.
Or like for you, because you like cold exposure, like holding an ice cube might be enough for you to help you like start you get breathing deeply without having to do like full cold plunge. Because it is like right when you're getting into the cold plunge, your sympathetic nervous system is firing like crazy because
Oh
your
yeah.
body's like, oh my God, I'm not safe. I'm gonna die. This is crazy. What's happening? It's like not until you get out on the other side that it starts to feel better and you feel like
Yeah.
you completed the stress cycle. But yeah, you're right that if you're up here, probably start with one of like the
Okay.
low impact tools for sure.
That's super helpful. And it gets very confusing with like, I love that we're in a time where there's all this information so accessible, but like none of it's customized to
Mhm.
ourselves. And that's why I always try and like, talk to people about using your intuition too to discern information. But yeah, as you know, I think we're a little bit out of that phase, but like for like 2 years, everything you saw on Instagram and social media was like people doing ice baths and like talking about all the benefits. And I think they are incredible, but it's like, again, like where are you at in life and what's good for you? And that's one of the reasons that I love breath work is because I feel like really if you're willing to let it be, breath work is kind of the answer to everything. Like
Really,
breathing.
couldn't
Hello.
agree more. Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like one thing about breath work is like, I think for some reason that has like a negative connotation to people, or they think it's like super complicated because it's like breath work or like breath techniques. And it's like, you're just counting a lot of the times.
Yes.
Like you can
Yes.
get fancy with it, but you can also just like breathe in for 3 seconds and breathe out for 5 seconds. Like I don't want people to overcomplicate it because like you said, it truly is like that is how you complete the stress cycle. It's just a matter of how you get yourself into that like deep breathing state. So like doing it actively is the quickest, easiest, most accessible way to do it. So it's like just find like experiment. That's what I always tell people too is like experiment with a bunch of like techniques or like sometimes I like to
Yeah.
call them patterns because I feel like that's less intimidating. I'm like start with a couple patterns, see if you like it, and if you don't. Or like if the 4 7 8 like for some of my older clients that feels like too long, like it feels too hard for them, and I'm like, all right, so go 4 5 6. Like you don't, it doesn't have to be
Right.
exact. It
Right.
doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Just do whatever works for you as an individual.
I mean, even I think there's two things with that. Like even a few deep breaths, like we do that. And so funny because it's intuitive to us when it comes to others, but not always with ourselves, right? Like my 3-year-old, when she's getting worked up about something, we go, okay, let's take a breath together. And we do. And she's been trained in that since she was little and she does it. And she's always like, I feel better, you know? And it's like, yeah, you do. And I do too, because I do it with you. But it's almost like we've been trained away from using our breath. And like you said, it doesn't like breath work, labeling it like that also almost makes it seem like it's like this big effort that you have to do. But I don't think people are realizing how few deep breaths they're taking in a day. And even something that for me that I knew needed to change and I've gotten a lot better with was like breathing all the way down to my belly, even just in my regular breaths. When I started noticing I was doing that, I was like, okay, there's hope. I'm like I'm like naturally starting to do this. I'm on the right track. But like we keep our breath like stuck in our chest so shallow, and like that just doesn't help with anything.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. And I love that you do that with your daughter. That's such a good habit for her to build so early on because it's like, gosh, she's going to be so well equipped when she gets older.
Yeah, thank you. I hope so. She's a I don't know if you know anything about astrology, but she's a Pisces moon. So
Okay.
very emotional in all the beautiful ways, but
Yes.
as a toddler, it's
Challenging
interesting.
to say the least.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so then when we're talking about stress cycles, is it really about you're working with clients? Is it really about teaching them skills to even just notice that that stress cycle is happening?
Yes, that's a huge piece of it. And it's really interesting because I always ask people, like in one of our first sessions, like, what are your typical stress responses? And most of them are like, I get really irritable, or I get really sad, or like I just feel really overwhelmed. And I'm like, I want you to start paying attention to the step before that, because
Mm-hmm.
before that,
Mm-hmm.
your heart rate's increasing, you're
Yeah.
tensing your muscles, you're clenching your jaw, your palms are sweaty, or you have butterflies. Like, we want to intervene at that point. That's the first signal that we need to act versus like once you're irritable, not to say that you're not necessarily still in fight or flight, but you've already been in it for a little bit for it to
Yes.
then transition from like that physiological state to that more like psychological state, if that makes sense. So paying attention to those triggers, I usually have people like start out but by just like writing them down. And it's hard too because in situations where you don't necessarily think you're stressed, like you may not be keeping an eye out for it. But like for me,
Yes.
this is another silly example, but I noticed when I have to walk my dog when my boyfriend's out of town and it's at night. And I was like taking her out at like whatever, 8 or 9. And I was literally walking around like this because I was like
Mm-hmm.
so scared
Yeah.
of the homeless population and all the things that go on in
Yes.
Venice. And like then I would come home and try to go to bed and I couldn't fall asleep. And I'm like, yeah, because I'm elevated. I'm all the way up here. And so I had to go, okay, feel my body and then go, all right, I need to relax. And then because I know now that that's like a stressful situation, I'm going to come home. I'm going to actively like lay down on the ground, do 5 big, deep belly breaths, then try to get in bed and go to sleep. So noticing those cues and trying to like shorten the gap between whatever the trigger is and then how you respond to it is a huge, huge underlying goal for us for sure.
Yeah. I love that. And I was going to ask you, like, what would you say to people who, like me, who don't feel mentally stressed? Like, don't feel mentally stressed, but like can see the symptoms in their body.
So I think
That I'm crazy.
no, 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 not at all, not at all. I was just going to say, if you don't feel mentally stressed, so okay, you don't feel mentally stressed, but you do feel physical symptoms in your body, I think still use the tools. I think still
Yeah.
use like the stress completion breathwork specific tools because again, like you're communicating with your body in that language. Like I think when we think about stress as like a mental issue, we kind of pigeonhole
Yeah.
ourselves into
Yeah.
being like, oh, if I journal, I'll feel better. And it's like they're all kind of working together. So like even if we don't the stress isn't at a conscious level, if we're feeling those symptoms, our body's trying to communicate something to us. And so I think like listening and then again communicating in the language that it knows by doing something that is physical, whether it's like we said, jumping up and down, shaking it out, or like taking a bunch of deep breaths,
Yeah.
like are hugely impactful.
Yeah. And I think another thing I want to share, like as far as physical symptoms, like for women especially, I hear it all the time and I experience this to a very intense degree, like that like I'd be like clenching my jaw and not realize it, or a lot of even to like being leaned really forward, like neck forward, back forward, leaning forward, or my shoulders would be clenched and always really, really tight. And like I think as women, we hold it a lot in the face, the jaw, the neck, the shoulders, and don't even realize it. And I got to a point where this was a few years ago. This was actually before the pandemic. Um, the fun of running a startup. I went and saw an acupuncturist and she looked at me and she was like, your jaw is dislocated, right? And I was like, what? She's like, your face is completely twisted and your jaw is dislocated on the right side. And she sent me to a jaw specialist that she knew, and a special chiropractor, and it was all from stress. from clenching and like just literally like the twisting of my body from holding stress and anxiety. And that was long before I was ready to, you know, do something about it. So you can imagine the journey from there. I mean, I was ready to fix my jaw, and that's still a work in progress. That was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And I'm still like doing the work with this, you know, with the chiropractor and the jaw specialist to like change and move my jaw back into the right place. But it's really wild what our body does and can handle. I guess that's not even like the right language, because my body didn't want to handle it, but like what our body will take on for us.
For sure. And it's so interesting you say the thing about clenching your jaw, because that's like definitely one of my go-to responses. And like I've been noticing it recently. Again, sounds so silly, but like we were watching Industry, and it's like very high intensity, very like
Yes.
suspenseful. And like I'll notice and I'll be like, oh my God, I'm clenching my jaw. And so like that is a perfect situation of like, I'm not mentally stressed out. This doesn't affect me in any way, but I am on edge. And so my body's interpreting that and
Yes.
reacting in that way. And so I have to like consciously be like, okay, let me just like relax my shoulders, unclench my jaw, take a deep breath, and then like jump back in. And even if I have to do that 10 times throughout the episode,
Yeah.
it's better than just being like, oh my God, the whole time. Because like you said, it's like over time, that is going to cause some serious
Yes.
like anatomical issues or whatever the case may be, whether it's physical or like whether it's anatomical or like within your body. It will have an impact if it's not like dealt with head on, for sure.
Dude, my husband thinks I'm so lame because I won't watch anything suspenseful or emotional or, I mean, scary movies I gave up like, you know, 15 years ago, that maybe even longer. It's probably been 20 years since I've watched a scary movie. I always knew that. But anything that has any kind of emotion to it, I'm like, no, like let's just watch a light, easy comedy that's under 30 minutes, because let's be real, I'm going to fall asleep. Like if it's more than 30 minutes.
Yes.
But yeah, you don't realize how much, even if it's like, I think there's just so many environmental things impacting us too. And it's like things that like maybe in a different time wouldn't feel stressful, but we're all at this like heightened level. And so there's this like invisible, heavy energy around that. It's like we need to start thinking about how to clear some of that stuff. And for me, it certainly is, you know, being really mindful of what I watch and listen to. And like, of course, you know, I like anyone, I love the like, you know, the true crime drama here and there. But let me tell you, I used to subscribe to true crime podcasts and like audiobooks, and I don't do that anymore. It's like once a month, maybe, if there's like a really good documentary that comes out. But I think generally it sounds like a lot of what you're talking about is it like starts with a mindfulness, and then you start to bring in the tools.
Absolutely. And honestly, I have a lot of clients too that are like, I noticed myself getting really stressed and I forgot about my tools. And I'm like, that's still a win. That
Yes.
being aware
Yes.
of it, being able to catch it while it's happening is huge. And ultimately, over time, you'll be able to shorten the gap of like noticing it and acting on it. But noticing it and really getting in touch with your body is such a crucial aspect of it. And I think like that's part of the reason where I also like to encourage people to do proactive and reactive stress management. So I'm like, at a bare minimum, 3 times throughout your day, I would love for you to just like do a body scan, get really intentional, take a few deep breaths just to bring you back to a normal baseline. And then also when you encounter stressful situations throughout the day. So just kind of keep you like fully regulated, because if we only like act on stress when we think we're stressed, like we said, there's so much more going on beneath the surface that I think like if we attack it from like a proactive approach as well as a reactive approach, and like proactively, it doesn't have to be like 10 minutes even. It can be 30 seconds of just going, okay, I'm just going to relax my shoulders and sit here and like take one deep breath, and like that's good enough. It doesn't have to be super complicated.
Yeah, and a lot of these things have like multiple benefits, right? Like if you could start your morning with a few minutes of breath work, like it doesn't have to be 20 minutes, it can be 4 minutes. Like that's going to help your nervous system. It's going to help clear your mind. It's going to help you feel grounded for the day. It's going to help you be a nicer person. Like, trust me, coming from experience, like I, you know, struggled for a decade, like trying to get into a morning routine. Now for the past 2 years, like you will not separate me from my morning routine. Like I am hardcore about it because I see all the benefits that it has. What about someone? So I think too, two things. I think one, it is like this preventative thing is really important. Like really important to just learn, even if you're feeling stressed, but you're like, I can kind of manage it. Like feels really important to understand how to recognize and manage it, because I'm now seeing, and I've experienced so many people who are so burnt out, so exhausted that they almost like have no gusto for life, like can't get out of bed, have no energy, like, and not realizing that they're at that stage until they're like years into burnout. Like, how do we help those people? How do we bring them back? Like, what do we do?
So it's really hard, I think, for those people. And I think part of the problem is that once you get to this elevated state, your body does learn to adapt to these
Yeah.
like elevated levels of stress hormones. So like brain fog and irritability and getting sick and being on edge, all of that kind of feels like the norm. So you don't even
Mm-hmm.
realize that like your life could be different. That's kind of how I was, where like I would come home every day and like need to have a glass of wine because I was like,
Yeah.
I just can't with everything. Like I'm so exhausted and tired and stressed, and this is the only thing that's going to calm me down. And so since then, I've obviously shifted those habits, thank God, because it was so bad for me. But like, I didn't realize too, even, I mean, I'm going way off of your question, but like, for
No,
me, I
I
didn't
love
even
it.
realize that like that alcohol, yes, it will take the edge off in the moment. And like, I'd probably have like maybe 2 to 3 glasses of wine, if that. And like, then I was showing up like mildly hungover every day. So that
Yeah,
was
because it's
making
impacting your
that making
sleep. That's making
right.
you more
Then it
stressed.
was just
Like,
like it was
yes.
this whole cycle of like I just can't get myself out of it. But like the thought of coming home and not having that like stress relief was so
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming to me that I was like, I can't even imagine a world in which that doesn't happen. And I ultimately decided to do like a sober January or something, and that like helped me kick it and replace it and like start really focusing on like actual habits that help me like restore my energy and wind down for the night and things like that in like a healthy longer term way. Um, but to answer your question about people that are like truly at their breaking point, I mean, I think you really have to come down to the basics, or at least start with the basics, because for those people too, they probably don't have a ton of flexibility in their
Mm-hmm.
schedule to be doing all of the things that would be hugely beneficial for them. So like I have a couple clients who are like single moms and they have young kids and then they also work full time. And so like they are or were at their breaking point. And it's almost like too, when you have kids in the picture, I think it's you're even less inclined to be aware of what's going on in your body
Yeah.
because so much of
Yeah.
your attention is focused on the other kids. So it's like
Yeah.
even just doing the smallest things of like, I just want you to chug one water when you wake up for the morning and like celebrate the hell out of that. Like it sounds so
Yes.
silly, but it's like
Yes.
if you're not hydrated, the symptoms of fatigue or the symptoms of
Mm-hmm.
dehydration are like the same as the symptoms of burnout. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just like
Yeah.
trying to make it so that it's not like adding more to their to-do list, but just like little bite-sized things that over time, if they can stay consistent with, will have a longer term impact. Um, and I
Well, and
think
the thing, sorry
no, no, no,
to
go ahead,
cut you
please.
off, talking about kids, moms, needing to show up and give to their kids, like the kids feel it. Like I've seen it with my own daughter. Like no matter how big of a smile you're putting on and trying to show up, like they psychically feel and are connected to your energy, and they feel it. Like so you're not doing them any favors.
Yes, for sure. I think that's a huge piece of it. And that's why, like, we always say, like, self-care isn't selfish. It's like self-care is helping recharge you so that you can better give to the people that are around you. Like it's definitely a two-way street. I think for the
Mm-hmm.
people that are like really at like a 10 out of 10 burnout, again, maybe not necessarily accessible, which is why I'm like kind of hesitating with this, but like some sort of time off, I think
Mm-hmm.
can help because sometimes you have to step out of the
Oh
environment to
yes. Oh
recognize
yes.
how bad it really is. And like taking a vacation, of course, is not going to cure your burnout because all of the things that existed while you were at work are still going to be there when you get
Yes.
back. But sometimes
Yes.
I think like a change of scenery, even if it's just for like a weekend, just taking a step back. I think screens are a huge, huge factor too, is like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for these people that are really, really burnt out, like they get home and they have this like revenge, like not even necessarily revenge sleep procrastination, but they're just like, I didn't get to do anything for myself all day. Like, I'm going to do whatever feels good in this moment. I'm going to scroll on my phone. I'm going to binge Netflix. I'm going to do all of these things, which, like,
Yes.
again, are not inherently bad. But when that's your only form of stress relief, you're not actually like recharging or nourishing yourself at a cellular level. So, like,
Yes.
even though it might feel like a little bit more effort to just like stretch, or like we said, like sit with your legs up the wall, like that's gonna go, the benefits of that are gonna last you much longer than like binging or scrolling for 20 or 30 minutes or hours, really. So I think it's
Yes.
just like being more intentional about their day-to-day habits, switching up the environment if they can, at least for like a short period of time, just so they can kind of like come up for air, and then like reintegrate with the awareness and the tools in their toolkit to help slowly bring them down to a more regulated state.
Yeah, I love that. Something that's been a huge tool for me that I think would be helpful for people who are feeling busy or maybe feeling like they can't get away for a couple days, or it's like, how do I break out of my day to day? I have all these responsibilities. Something that's been really cool tool for me are float tanks. Have you experienced them at all?
I have not, and I've been meaning to do
Oh,
it. So now I'm gonna have to
you,
actually make the
oh,
commitment.
you would love it. Yeah, you're in Venice. There are options.
Yeah.
I mean, so the float tank, just to explain it to everyone, it's this tank. They're usually, so the place that I go to, and there's one in Venice, and there are a bunch of them around LA. It's called Pause. That's my favorite place that I've been to, and it's this beautiful like spa-like environment. Already a win, right? You go in and you go into this float tank for an hour. These tanks are like these, they're not like scary at all. They're white, they're big, they're beautiful, they have lights in them. And it is salt water with like some absurd amount of salt, magnesium in it, and enough for you to float, literally suspended in the water, weightless. And so the idea is that it's like, they think they used to call them like deprivation tanks. Like, sounds a little scarier than float tank. The pause ones are beautiful. You can have music on if you want. I never do. You can keep the light on if you want. They have these little float pillows that you can put your head on, and you just fucking float in water that is warm. It's like the temperature of your body. Like it's supposed to be this experience of like bringing you back to the womb. And you float there for an hour, and it's just like it takes you to another world. And like between the environment of floating, the magnesium, the lack of sensory stimulation, like it is so replenishing and so rejuvenating. Like, especially considering it's like an hour, it probably ends up being like 2 hours out of your day, after you shower and like get there and stuff. But like, it's so worth it. And it's not a fix, like overall fix, but it's like something that can certainly help and get you out of your way a little bit and kind of like give you some feeling of restoration.
Absolutely. I love that idea. And I'm so glad we just talked about it because it's been on my list to try it. And I have like a coupon for pause. So now I'm like, all right, I gotta get
Oh,
my ass over there and do the
it's
float for sure.
it's so good. I've been obsessed with it for years, and I honestly think it actually is what like kept my like stress levels less obvious, like because there was less damage to my physical body, because I would do that really regularly. I would do that, and then I owned a juice shop, so I had access to cold pressed juice, and in my juice shop we had a cryotherapy sauna, and so I would do cryotherapy all the time. I had cold pressed juice every day. I had the float tank, and so I had a sauna at home, and so like I was doing all these things that kind of masked how stressed I really was, because they helped my body maintain a little bit better. And then when COVID hit and like we couldn't go out and do any of those things, that's when it was like very quickly like donezo, you know?
Exactly.
Um, okay, let's talk about habits. Like a habit expert, like good Lord, we all wish we were one, right? Like, so give us some expert advice on habits. Tell us all the things we need to know.
So I think one crucial element that a lot of people neglect to account for is like in order for a habit to stick, you have to identify with that habit. You can't just like
Mm,
randomly decide you're going to work out every day and then like work out and show up even on your worst days. Like I think it's all about making the habit so, so, so small that you can do it. So let me actually back up a little bit. I like to have my clients do like 3 tiers of habits where it's like, these are the habits I can do on my high energy day. These are the habits that are like my medium energy. And then these are the habits that I can do like on my absolute worst day. And I
Okay.
think the like for me, my example is like on my best day, I'll go do like an hour flow class at open. On my like medium energy day, I'll do like a 15-minute Pilates at home. And on my lowest energy day, I'll do like a 5-minute stretch. And
Yeah.
so like the beauty of that, and I'm a huge fan of habit trackers, I think because it's just really good to have a visual representation of your progress, especially when your habits are so small. You're not going to see the results right away, and that can sometimes feel like demotivating or deflating. So I think just like seeing how consistent you are in your streaks can
Yes.
help keep up momentum. But what I like about it is like when you're using a habit tracker, even if you do what like your plan C, for example, that still counts. You still get to
Mm-hmm.
check that day off and maintain your consistency. And so then over time, it's like, yeah, I am someone that moves my body every day because even if it's 5 minutes of stretching versus like an hour-long yoga class, it still counts because I'm an active person. And then you kind of
Mm-hmm.
start to
Yes.
identify with that or like embody that identity of an
Yes.
active person as opposed to just like setting really lofty goals, trying to meet them here and there when you can. And then it's like, again, that consistency piece, if you're not super consistent, it's likely not going to stick in the long term. So I think like having, even if it's just a plan A and a plan B, like a good days and less good days, like that's better than just having one habit, I think can be hugely helpful for people.
Yeah, and the thing about that too is like certainly my experience, like you keep doing it and then all of a sudden it's like not something you think about. It is just like a part of your routine, a part of your personality. Like you said, you identify with it and like so you're so like, cool, I'm a person who gets up every day and does yoga, or I get up and have a morning routine to get myself grounded. It might change every day, but that's just who I am and what I do. I'm a person who drinks water first thing in the morning, like then all these things that like seemed like such a big deal or like you wished you could do it, like all of a sudden you're just like, it is just a part of the flow of your life. And that's like, feels really cool and really freeing.
Yeah, and that's like the whole benefit of habits, right? Is to like reduce some of that mental energy and us trying to like
Yes.
think about and plan for these things, and rather than that, just have them be like seamlessly integrated into our routine. And I think like a really good way to do that too is like habit stacking is one of my favorite tools of all time because you're basically like using existing neural pathways and building on top of them. So it makes it easier for your brain to remember. So like examples that I give my clients are like, if you want to start working on like proactive nervous system regulation throughout the day. And again, this is like a bare minimum. In an ideal world, we do this like every hour, but that's not necessarily feasible for everyone. So say we're going to go with 3 times a day. I usually tell my clients like before you get out of bed, right after you hit your alarm, do 5 rounds of the physiological sigh. So, like, you're stacking the breathing onto turning off your alarm, something that's already automatic and an
Yep.
existing neural pathway
Yep.
in your
Okay.
brain. And then, like, maybe when you sit back down at your desk after lunch, or like you have that 12 o'clock meeting every day, like whatever you can use as a cue or a trigger to then go, oh, this is when I do my 5 rounds of box breathing or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be. And then again, like, for me, I do my daily meditation after dinner. So it's like after I wash the dishes from dinner, I come and I do my meditation. So it's like
Love that.
triggered in my brain.
Yes.
And I think that can be super helpful for people, especially when you have a lot on your plate and like building new habits can kind of feel overwhelming. It's like just pick things that you already do and add like a tiny little 2 to 5 minute habit on top of that, get that consistent, and then build up. And then you can add additional throughout the day, or you can
Yep.
extend the length of whatever it is, the habit that you're working on. But I think like the small habit stacking can go a really long way for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And it's just about doing it. I like you mentioned a habit tracker. What is that something that you would just say like, okay, write down in your journal, or are there digital things that we can use, or what would you recommend?
So I love the Streaks app. It's like a 4.99 or 5.99 one-time purchase. But what I love about it is it's really customizable. So like for me, you can, or not just for me, for everyone, you can customize like the frequency in terms of like times of day or days a week. So like for me, I have 4 waters a day. And so I like check it off 4 days. Like my gratitude is twice a day, things like that. I have like my artist date is once a week. And so that, and it's kind
Mm.
of cool because it gamifies it a little bit. And that like if you get them all, they like turn into gold medals and there's like a little like fun like slot
Oh,
machine.
okay, okay.
So it's like
Uh,
it's using the things that are typically like used against us with like social media and like
yes,
addiction and
yes.
gambling and whatever, and using it for good. So that's something that I recommend to my clients. And honestly, everybody that's used it has loved it and is like, I can't imagine going without it. And like I have gone through periods where like I stop using it for a little bit. And then as soon as I get back, I'm like, how did I ever not use this? It just
Right.
keeps me in check. And it's like, it's good too because it's a nice reminder. Like when I go to grab my phone, I have it on my home screen and I have like all of my like social media nonsense stuff on my second screen. And so like if I go to pick up my phone, I'll see, oh, I have like a little red notification, like shit, you know what? I should just like do my gratitude journal before I jump on Instagram. Like it's a good like visual reminder.
I like that. Yeah. What
Yeah.
are the habits that you like that you are your non-negotiables?
So right now I need to wash my face twice a day. Sad, but it's just something I'm starting to do in the last several months because I used to
Okay.
only do it at night and now I'm really trying to do it in the morning. So I have that on there. I have my gratitude twice a
Wait a minute.
day. I
You
know.
would get up and just start your day without
Yes.
washing your face.
Yes. Because I was like, I washed it last night. It's fine. I haven't done anything since I slept. It's fucking disgusting. It's so bad.
Amazing. I mean, it's amazing actually. Like, wow. Okay. I can't even process that because I'm so hardcore about like my face routine, my skin routine, like my husband's like, all right, it's time for bed. He's like, I'll see you in 30 minutes after you like wash your face and do all your things, you know?
Yes.
But I
Yes.
kind of love that for you. Like, how freeing to just like get up and go into the damn day. I love it.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But now we're working on it. We're working on it, and I've been doing it. I've been really consistent, which is great. Usually now it's like maybe won't do it at night if I'm like out with friends and I get home late or whatever. But that's usually the only time I break that habit, sadly. Um,
Oh, this is wild. This is wild information. I would die. I wouldn't sleep if I didn't wash my face. Like I am
but that's why you have such beautiful skin too.
oh, thank
This is
thank
where
you.
we're at.
It's just like one of those habits that it's been just a part. It just is a part of like it's like you brush your teeth. It's it just is so ingrained in my own habits.
Yes. So okay, washing my face twice a day. I do no phone for 30 minutes when I wake up. That's a huge one. And
Love that.
honestly, maybe as a standalone habit, one of the most impactful habits I think for
Yes.
all of my
Yeah.
clients is like it just for so many reasons, for cortisol, for dopamine, for just overall anxiety. Like when you pick up your phone, you don't realize how much your brain is responding to it and how much it's gonna like put you on a roller coaster for the rest of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely a non-negotiable. Getting sunlight within 15 minutes of waking up. I take my dog to the beach every morning. That's my little
Love
like
that.
natural light circadian rhythm
Yeah.
regulation. I do my gratitude twice a day. I have movement twice a day, but not like crazy. I do like micro movements while I'm at work. So I'll do like 20 squats and like a 1 minute plank in the morning, and then I'll do like some lunges and like push-ups or whatever in the afternoon. And then what are my other ones? Oh, my water. I do that. I have 4 bottles of water a day. Um, I think that's really it for the most part as my non-negotiables. I used to have like
Yeah.
my veggie intake on there, but I felt
Mm,
like it became natural enough that I was like, all right, I don't
yeah.
need to be
Yeah.
counting like cups of spinach every time I eat something. We're just gonna go with the flow and assume I'm getting my fruits and
Yeah.
veggies.
Yeah. And I think it's about finding, as you've talked about many times on this episode, it is about finding the balance and like what works for you and a starting place. It doesn't have to be everything all at once. It's like there's some really basic places to start. Like you said, if you're not drinking water first thing in the morning, like do that. The not touching your phone for 30 minutes, like amazing. Get an alarm clock, get something else in your room, like do that. Just starting in those two places could be make huge shifts.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, ugh, what do you like how did we get here? This is maybe more of a philosophical question because I don't like I'm not necessarily expecting you to have the exact answer, but like this doesn't feel normal. Like, it doesn't feel like it's the way we're supposed to be and the way we're supposed to be living. And all of us, it's not just like, okay, well, yeah, because you're a busy CEO running this big business, like you're stressed. It's like, no, every freaking person is stressed. Like, how did we get here?
I mean, I think it's a systemic issue. I think it's our culture. I think it's our society. I think kind of a curveball, but I think like the diet culture, especially for women,
Mm,
has a huge
mm,
impact because it's like
mm.
not only are you supposed to be successful in your career and a good parent, but you're also supposed to be like hot and a size zero and only eat whole food. And it's just like it makes it too overcomplicated. And then, like we talked about initially, it's like you're putting all of this pressure, like this unnecessary pressure, both
Yes.
internally and externally on yourself to meet these unrealistic ideals. And it's like when you get in that battle, even just that internal battle of like, should I work out? Like, but I want to lose weight. Like, I want to look, it's like that your body's interpreting that as stress
Mm-hmm.
and your body's going to
Mm-hmm.
respond to that. So it's like kind
Mm-hmm.
of like toning down that internal narrative that's trying to get you to like either set the high expectations or meet the unrealistically high expectations, things like that. I think that's a huge piece of it. I think, like you said too, it's just like hustle culture. Like the more you're doing, the more you're producing, the more output you have is like somehow become tied to our worth. When the reality is like we are all worthy as we are doing absolutely nothing. We don't have to necessarily
Yeah.
be contributing to
Yes.
society. Like it's a nice added bonus, but like we're still human beings and we're still worthy of like love and respect. Um, I think, yeah, that's and just like not I think it's the phones. I think it's phones and technology is a huge piece and we're all just constantly seeking that instant gratification. And so we've stopped like doing things that feel uncomfortable for us because we can't sit with boredom without like
Uh-huh.
doing turning to substances or turning to our phones or whatever the case may be. And I think like one thing that I've really tried to embody lately is like anything worthwhile is on the other side of discomfort. Like it's got to be
Mm-hmm. I
uncomfortable for
love
you to
that.
get like really good results. Like a cold plunge is a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
Like working out is a good example. It's like, yeah, it's not fun necessarily. Sometimes it is, but most of the time it's not. But it's like how you feel after.
Yes.
Our brains are like so like we have like amnesia for how we feel after workouts, I feel like. And it's like if we could just like I literally left a class the other day and recorded myself because I was walking over and I was like, I'm gonna just turn around. I was like, I'm gonna turn around. I'm not gonna go. I'm so tired. I don't want to do this.
Mm.
And I left the class like I felt like I was transported to another universe.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
amazing. And I was like, I need to hold on to this feeling. Like I need to remind myself that like this is what I'm after, but I have to do the uncomfortable thing first. And I think like our brains want comfort and familiarity and safety. So just like knowing that too, I think that knowledge is power in itself because it's like just know when you go to walk out of the house to go to the gym, your brain is going to put up a fight and that's okay. You don't have to listen to it. You can
Yeah.
look past it and go, yeah, I hear you, but like I'm still going to go do this because I
Yeah.
know I'm going to feel happy that I did it after the fact kind of deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. And something again that like, having a 3-year-old has taught me accidentally is like when we talk to her, like when she talks about being afraid of something, we automatically turn it into bravery. Like, it's not about being afraid or uncomfortable. It's like, do you feel brave enough for this? And that like sparked. And again, we did that without even fully like again, we have so much of this like intuitively we know so much, especially when it comes to helping other people, right? We didn't necessarily like plan that and be like, okay, next time she says she's afraid, we're going to talk to her about being brave. It just like kind of naturally came up. And to see her reaction now being like, I'm brave, and she doesn't even say I'm afraid. She'll say, well, no, she's uncomfortable about doing something because she'll say, but I'm brave. I'm going to be brave right now. And it's with little things like we were at Disney for her birthday recently. Not a place to go if you're burnt out, by the way. Um, but just like getting photos with the characters, something we knew that was completely safe for her and we knew she wanted to do because she loved them. And she changed at first. She was like, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. And then the narrative changed to, I'm brave. I'm really brave. And I'm going to go sit with Minnie because I'm brave. And it was like, yes, like that is just the shift that we all need in the narrative. It's like, no, that doesn't seem fun, but like I'm brave, and through bravery, I know I'm brave because I know on the other side it is going to be better and incredible, and like all the good comes. So
Love that. I think we can
lessons
take
from
a
a
page out of,
3-year-old.
yeah, we can certainly take a page out of her book. I always tell my clients, like, one of my like favorite mantras, at least for a few of them, are like, I can do hard things, like, or like hard things
Yes.
are good for me. Like,
Dude, that was
hard-
my mantra when giving birth. Like, that was,
not the hardest thing of
and
all
it's
time.
also sometimes my mantra going into the cold plunge. But
Yes, yes.
yes, in that surrender of giving birth, that was like just like, fuck, I can do hard things. Like, but there's nothing to compare it to in life that you've been through. Like, you're like, yeah, I've done hard things in the past, but this is nothing has been or in the moment felt as hard as that. But yeah, I can do hard things. I love that.
My faves for sure.
Yeah, I think another thing, just to touch on this one last time, like another thing with the social media, I was just having this conversation with girlfriends this week, is like we have never seen ourselves. So, like, people have never looked at themselves so much as we do now through photos on our phone, through photos on social media, posting photos and comparing them to other people. Like, it's not normal for us to see ourselves this much and to pick ourselves apart. And like, I think that adds to a lot of stress and anxiety. And like everything that you do, every outing, every experience you have with your family, now you're like, well, I want to look good just in case photos are taken and we want to share them on social media. And like, it's this weird, like, space to navigate and like be a part of, and also like not want to be a part of it all at the same time.
Yes, I couldn't agree more because I'm someone that hates pictures, but I do find myself like consciously or subconsciously being like, okay, well, gotta wear a cute outfit because what if there are pictures? And it's
Right.
like the fact that
Yes.
we're even thinking about that, and even like go to an event and be there, be at that event and do it with all of your being. Don't worry about like taking pictures, but it's hard because it's like everybody else is. So if you're not,
Mm-hmm.
then it's
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, Katie must be doing nothing with her life if she's not posting it on Instagram. You know what I mean? Which is like obviously not true. And no one's thinking that, but like
Yes.
you've told
Oh,
yourself this story that like people are going to think I'm boring or I'm not doing anything if I'm not posting about it. And it's
yeah.
like, it's almost like that spotlight effect too, where you think like people are paying more attention to you than they really
Then they
are.
are.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
they're in their own heads about themselves
Yes.
too.
Oh,
But
for sure. I decided to show up that way on social media this summer. Like, we did a ton of traveling and really fun, cool stuff and like visiting family. And I was like, people aren't going to know that they might know in hindsight, like, okay, like at the end of the summer, I put together like a cute reel with family members and stuff. And like, you could see that we were in different places. But like in the moment, I was like, I don't need to show that we're like out on a boat at this island with crystal clear water. And it's like so beautiful. Like, I don't need to show all of these things right now. People don't need to, because what's the purpose behind me showing people? It doesn't add to my experience in the moment. It takes away from it. And it's like, it doesn't feel healthy. Like, what I want people to see that I'm doing something cool and interesting and like feel bad about themselves.
right.
I don't know what I want, but like whatever it is, it doesn't feel good. And that like that felt nice. Like that felt like what I wanted to do and how I wanted to show up, and like less and less showing like the stuff that's going on in life and just sharing like, you have a purpose for being on social media. You're sharing messages and information. And like that's kind of the direction that feels right for me as well.
I love that. And I think like still take the pictures so you have them for later, like for your
Right.
memories and things like that. But like don't take them with the intention of like sharing them with the rest of the world. Like keep
Yeah.
them for
Yeah.
yourself. Or
Yeah.
like if you do feel inclined, like you said, like after your trip, if you want to do a big recap, like I love those because I think it's so much better than like trying to do it in the moment. And even sometimes like when I go out to dinner and I take a picture of like a dish or something, and I'm like, oh, I should post this because it looks so good. And then it's like I'm like going like, what do I put? What do I say for the caption? Da, da, da. And it's just like, just eat the fucking food.
Yeah.
That you don't need to like make this a bigger deal than it is. Just like make it easy on
Yeah.
yourself and like eat. Like
Yeah.
as simple
Well,
as
I
that.
think I think presence is a huge key to balancing the nervous system, like balancing stress, like our constant push for like the future, the next thing, the like, is not it's not healthy. And like presence, yeah, that's been one of the things I've been really trying to work on. And it's hard. But presence is also what helps you like slow down and just see more of life.
Yeah.
Um, with that, one last question for you. What you have 10 seconds with someone to say something that could have a profound impact on their life, or an impact, a positive impact. What would you say?
I think I would say anything worthwhile is on the other side of discomfort and
Mm,
hard things are good for you.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I think we're in a time where people need to hear that more and like start exercising that so that they know that it's true. Cause it's like, it's 100% true. I, through my journey, have been called fearless many times. I'm like, I'm not fucking fearless. Let me tell you, like, yes, it is not that. It's about just the decision. It is that knowing and that certainty that like the other side will all be good. And it's like the thing that you're afraid of is like, it's seconds, like sharing something publicly or doing something, like it is like just a tiny part of the whole experience. And then all the rest of it is great and amazing. So yes, I love that. Awesome. Katie, where can people find you? How can they work with you? I know you have a specific program. Can you tell us a little bit about all of that?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Shift with Katie, ShiftWithKatie. My website is shiftwellnesscollective.com. And I have a 3-month one-on-one burnout program. I'm working with women of all ages, professions, walks of life. And like I said, we were really just like focusing on nervous system regulation, some mindset shifts, more so healthy habits too, in terms of like eating for blood sugar balance to help your energy levels, exercising in a way that feels good and doesn't feel like punishment or like a requirement. It's like you're doing it so that you can fuel your body and recharge your body. And it's all really customized. I think that's like the beauty of it, is like habit formation is such a cornerstone of the program, because I want to fit these habits into your individual life. Like the same things aren't going to work for everyone. And I always tell, like, some of my clients before they started working with me were like, I'm so scared I'm not going to be able to do the things that you want me to do. And then I'm going to feel bad and I'm going to disappoint you. And I'm like, there's no such thing as failure. It is literally only feedback. If a tool isn't working for you, that says nothing about you and everything about the tool. And we just trial and error. We just stop, we pick up, we shift to the next thing. And like the amount of tools that we have at our disposal are limitless. It's just about like experimenting. And so like I'm kind of there experimenting with you, holding you accountable, helping you reflect on what worked and didn't work, so that then we can, again, like I said, either pivot or continue doing what we're doing and make it really consistent, so that you just feel generally like more energetic, more fulfilled, calmer, less stressed, happier, all the things we all want in life. Sometimes we need help getting there, for sure.
Oh yes. I think we always should have help. Like we should always have a coach, some kind of coach, like especially if you are looking to, like, I hate to use the word maximize, but to really like embrace and enjoy this human experience. I've had multiple coaches for the past 2 years, and it is like just the accountability and a reason to like continue to show up for yourself outside of just yourself, and someone to cheer you on and believe in you. Like it is, I will have a coach for the rest of my life. Like, yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all of this. Everyone, please follow and check out Katie. If anything in this episode resonated with you, please share it with a friend. This is certainly a very universal topic, and Katie shared plenty of insights and tips that could start to make an impact for you today. So share it in your friend group, get the conversation going about burnout and stress and how, we're done with it. We're all ready for a shift into a new paradigm of peace and flow and actually living life. Thank you for the work that you do, Katie, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.